So today what we're going to do is we're going to learn to recognize misleading graphs. Make sure you write this down before moving on. And today's date and page number in your notes. All right, so let's get our brains thinking of math before we really get into the goal. Here's your warm-up. Whole bunch of numbers. Just find the mean, median. Oh, I'm sorry, not even the mean. Just the median, the mode, and the range. Come back when you're done. All right, so here are the answers you should have had for the median, 36. The mode, there wasn't any. The range was 33. Now, if you go ahead and you find the mean, I might have a 50 for you, but you got to go find it on your own and show it to me at the end of the lesson. All right, now that we're warmed up, let's get into this goal of misleading graphs. All right, so let's take a look at a couple bar graphs and see how they can be misleading. So if you look at this graph, it's obviously about car prices. On the x-axis is the 3 different cars that you could be looking at, and the price is the y-axis. Now, why do you think this bar is misleading? Well, it doesn't look like there's anything wrong with it, but then you have to look along the y-axis, and you'll notice this zigzag line. That's normally put on graphs when you're trying to shrink down all the data because there is so much between 0 and 20,000, they didn't want to put that all in the graph. Well, because of that lower part of the vertical axis, the difference in prices look exaggerated. So if you look at the high end, which is the red one, you get $23,000. Car A is $20,000. So what's the difference between the two cars of the high and the low? Only $3,000. But the graph is drawn to look real misleading. A lot of times for cars, this might be done by multiple companies to try to show that their car is a lot cheaper than the other car, when in reality, it's only a $3,000 difference. So that's how this is misleading. Now, if you want to put this in your notebook, you can, but you do not have to. Let's take another example of this same exact table. So what do you think people might believe from this misleading graph? Again, we're kind of looking at this, and they might think that the cost of car B and car C is only 1.5 to 2.5 times as much as car A. Now, in reality, again, it's only a few $1,000s. So that's another thing that we could take away from this graph. All right, so I have a graph here I want you to look at. And what I want you to do is I want you to try to tell me why this bar graph is misleading. So take a look at it. And then what might people believe from this misleading graph? So what is it that people are being kind of lied to about? The graph is about volunteers at a community center. We're looking along the x-axis at the number of volunteers. 0, 50, 1,000, 150, so it's going by 500s. And we're looking at the different eras of years for volunteering. There's a hint to you to look along the y-axis for that misleading part. Come back when you got it. All right, so I've given you a chance to take a look at this volunteering graph, and you probably noticed that the graph is misleading simply because the years for the bars are not represented equally. The top bar goes from 1940 to 1980, so that's 40 years. But the next two go from 81 to 90 and 91 to 2000. And those are only 10-year gaps. So why is this misleading? Well, the community center had a lot more volunteers. Actually, between 91 and 2000, they had 1,000 people in 10 years. Where over 40 years, they had, it looks like, 3,250, something like that. So it's trying to trick you into thinking that there were a lot more volunteers in the past than there are now. So that gap that they're looking at is a lot different. All right, if you got that right, feel good about yourself. All right, let's take a look at line graphs now. So line graphs are great graphs for showing information over time. And you can see we're looking at temperatures in April and temperatures in May. And we're looking at them over time in the sense of weeks. Week 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So if we look at these graphs, let's see what's misleading about them. Well, if you look at the scale for each graph, you'll notice that the April graph is going to go from 52 to 68. The May one goes from 67 to 81, and I know they have the little squiggly thing there again, but that's okay because you're shrinking it down. The issue with this graph is it's misleading because one starts at 52 and one starts at 67. So people think that the temperatures are moving about the same in each month, but if you think about it, April starts in 54 degrees, May is starting in 68 degrees. That's a big difference in temperature. That's a big difference. 14 degrees is a lot of heat that they're trying to mislead you there. So this is why the graph is misleading. So what might people believe from this misleading graph? Well, people believe that the temperatures in May are about the same. So again, this is misleading by the numbers. Always look for the little clues. Everything should be consistent between two graphs, especially if you're trying to show temperatures over time, because you want to make sure people can see the difference in the temperatures each month. This makes you think that April is just as warm as May. It ain't true. Here is another one where we're going to look at two different corporations. This kind of goes along with the different graph we looked at in a different lesson. And we're looking here at stock prices. And we have the years. And then we have the stock prices in the money. And it goes 0, 80, 85, 90, 95. So why is this graph misleading? Well, let's go over that again. The scale goes from 0, 80, then it goes by fives. So it makes you think that these graphs are, that there's a huge difference between these two graphs, and really it's not. The misleading part is that misleading part is that they're not really that far apart, but they try to make it look like Corporation A is skyrocketing in their price and Corporation B's stock is falling dramatically, when really the difference between both of those is about $10. All right, so here's a line graph I want you to look at, and I want you to figure out why this is misleading and what might people believe. So write that down in your notebook. Come on back. Okay, so if we take a look at our graph here, it was on distances biked. And if we look at the distances home from mile, it goes 0, 2, 4, 6, 8 for miles. And time goes 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. And then you have Wanda being the purple and Carrie being the blue. So when you're looking at this, there's something misleading about it. And what's misleading is that Carrie's bike doesn't actually begin at home. You would imagine if they both started at home, they would both be at 0, right? So what it appears to be is that Carrie's bike actually went further in a certain time period, but when actually she didn't. So they misled you by putting the graph at a different starting point. So this is where the misleading piece is. Sometimes you got to look a little more carefully at where the mistake is, or where the misleading part is. All right, so we've done a little bit at looking at misleading graphs and how they can kind of trick you. I want you to go ahead and answer these box of thought questions. So give an example of a situation in which you think someone would intentionally try to make a misleading graph. What situation would someone try to trick people? And number 2, tell who might have made a misleading graph in example 2C. So if you go back to 2C, it might help you to answer that one. And tell how you could change the graph in 2C so that it is not misleading. And if I just quickly go back here for you, this is 2C, the stock prices. Okay, that's for question 2 and 3. Come back when you're done. All right, sorry for the announcement there. Here is your quiz. I got 2 major questions. Why might this line graph be misleading? And what might people believe from this? So if we look at it real quick, we're looking at water park patrons. That's how many people visited a water park. Look at the x-axis and y-axis and make sure you can try to identify where that misleading part is. All right, Good luck, and thanks for stopping in.